You're welcome back. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Next is business news with Tokwe Alabi.
Nigeria's telecom's contribution to GDP now is 16%, as the country is witnessing a steady increase in active voice and internet subscriptions. The Nigerian Telecommunications Commission, NCC, says there is a drop in tele-density which has been adjusted to reflect the latest population growth figures in line with global best practices. NCC explained that the adjustment is a reflection of the telecom industry statistical reports predicated upon the Nigerian Population Commission's projection of 216 million as of 2022, replacing the previously used 2017 projection of 190 million people. With the consequential adjustment, which is in line with the International Telecommunications Union ITU's calculation of teledensity, the nation's teledensity, a factor of 1 line per 100 individuals in the population, dropped from 115.63% to 102.30% in the last quarter of 2023, while broadband penetration witnessed a similar drop from 45.47% to 40.85%. NCC's Executive Vice Chairman Aminu Maida affirmed the nation's telecom statistical adjustment process as an appropriate step to maintain the integrity of data about the Nigerian telecom industry as collected, collated and published by the Commission.
One of the things we're going to really try and drive is a data-centric approach. Today, the Commission collects a lot of data, but how do we use that data? How do we present that data? And is that data even sufficient? We present data sometimes at a national level, but truly some of these problems are local.
In another development, the Senate, through its Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, has summoned the Governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, Olayemi Cardoso, to appear before it next week to answer questions on the state of the economy and the free fall of Naira in the forex market. The committee, chaired by Senator Adetokunbo Abiru, met on Wednesday when the Naira nosedived to 1,520 Naira to a US dollar against 1,482 Naira on Tuesday, and resolved to summon the CBN governor on the way out. With business news, Tokwe Alabi.
Thanks, Tope Alabi, for the business news. Up next is newspaper review.
Well, we have a newspaper reviewer here. Chooks, good morning to you this morning.
How are you doing? Good morning.
I'm good.
I like your simple but elegant wear, always.
Yeah, it's
Thank
lovely.
you.
And just as I was getting in, I heard her telling the viewer, I am Jumai. How are you, Jumai?
Look, I'm on a high this morning,
Good morning.
so
Oh, you're always a
everybody
happy
needs to
soul.
know,
It's
know
a
how to
happy
pronounce my name.
Yes, you're welcome.
My
Jumai.
Jumai.
interesting.
I came in here with Jumai, south.
Okay.
Jumai.
All right.
Wonderful.
Okay, let's kickstart the newspaper.
The
this
newspaper
morning.
review this morning. Let's begin with the leadership newspaper. And above the masthead, religious sect laundering money for terrorists. Fine, that is coming from the EFCC boss. And Binani loses Supreme Court, affirms Finteris election. Find details on page 7. Just below the masthead, trending, woman arrested for selling 2 sons in Anambra. And numbers, railway earns 286.78 million from cargo, Naira from cargo. You find the details on page 2. CBN moves against forex speculation, hoarding, issues fresh guidelines. Find details on page 7. 2 courts give conflicting orders over arrest of Fubara's chief of staff. You also find the details on page 7. And at the side piece of the picture story, Nigeria Air deal under EFCC investigation. Nigerian Air deal under EFCC investigation. That's coming from the Minister of Aviation, Kiamo. I will not take leadership award for granted, coming from Governor Adlia. You find the details on page 4. Tedola becomes chairman FBN Holdings. Details on page 25. And the headlines in the leadership newspaper: insecurity, no negotiation with bandits, Northwest Governor's vow. With riders, Zamfara launches 2,600 community guards. A unitary police force can't secure Nigeria, says General Gusau. Poverty, criminality in North need urgent attention. That's coming from the Vice President, Kashim Shettima. Well, that's about what we have.
Okay, let me start. I have two papers here. The first is the Daily Times. And on Daily Times front page, we have Naira redesign, reduce customs revenue in 2023. And below the nameplate, we have EFCC indict religious bodies for terrorism, money laundering, and court blocks agencies' attempts to recover 13 billion naira. Court orders arrest of Rivers Chief of Staff over burnt assembly complex. We have the FDI in Nigeria orders down to $841 billion in 2023. Supreme Court dismisses Binani APC's appeal on Adamawa polls. The story is on page 5. Palliatives. Reps order fire service to refund 48 billion naira to federal government. Now moving on to the second newspaper, which is the Vanguard. Above the nameplate, we have Ekiti kidnap. Ondo, Amoteku deploys 100 personnel, parades 31 suspect. Ekiti kidnap. Ondo, Amoteku deploys 100 personnel, parades 31 suspects. You know, the kidnapping of the children and the killing of the monarchs.
The killing of the two monarchs.
Yes, you know, the Amoteku. Yeah.
If you could take it to that level,
It's
sad.
People. It's
no,
sad.
no human being is superior to another.
Yes.
But if you could take it to the level of killing monarchs, that means you're saying we can ride roughshod over society and nothing would happen. And we are saying security, don't let them get away with that notion.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense at all, you know.
Okay, bandits kidnap 2 sisters in Abuja, demand 30 million. Just what you have just said now. See, bandits again in Abuja. That story is on page 6. It's quite worrisome.
Alarming situation.
FCT. EFCC investigating ex-minister Sarika over Nigeria Air deal. Keyamo, Northwest governors rule out negotiations with terrorists. That story can be found on page 30. And the major headline on Vanguard, it's CBN clamps down on banks, pegs trade and asset in forex. Measure expected to boost liquidity. Banks compliance may lead to Naira appreciation, analyst. And Naira down to 1,490 Naira appreciates in official market. It's anyway. That's our discussion.
That's
today.
our topic for discussion
We'll
today.
leave you to discuss that.
Yes, we'll discuss it. EFCC battles religious sect over 13 billion money laundering for terrorists. Can you imagine that?
13 billion.
Yes.
30 billion.
13.
It's 13.
13 billion naira money laundering for terrorists. Jokes.
That's a lot of money.
You know, when Karl Marx talked about religion being the opium of the people, you see, what we're telling religious sects these days, and it doesn't matter what faith you have in mind, is examples are better than precepts.
Yes.
Preachment. If we don't see God in you, you're wasting the people's time. We have to return to whom we were. We have to. We have to. Whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Christian, whether you're even an atheist. Because in those days in my village, the people you call atheists would not come close to another man's wife.
No.
They would not touch your bunch of palm nuts, which you kept on the farm path, for somebody to come and take it and keep your money for you.
Yes.
We were good, Demola. Jumai, we were a people. What happened to our values? What happened?
No, but it's something you just can't
It
explain.
doesn't make
You
sense.
can't explain it.
An organism must preserve itself. The way we are going, are we preserving our lives as organisms? Self-liquidation is not an option in natural law.
Even our culture is forgotten along the line.
About our culture, you see, when you see parents who don't care anymore, Soso Turenchi, because you start with
Soso
language.
Turenchi.
Soso Turenchi
Big
at home,
English.
you know? And this Turenchi, the likes of Chukudi will tell you, we make a few hundreds of thousands of naira from teaching people.
Do you know why it worked then?
But one day my wife told me something which I've never forgotten. Chukudi, I don't doubt that you speak very good English. But now that things are hard for us, can you speak it into a pot?
Into a pot.
You boil it and we serve it for dinner. I looked at this woman, I didn't know what to reply.
He's still talking about the woman. You know why, things are just going the way it is. Women are supposed to be nurturers. They're supposed to be at home.
Don't say
They're supposed
supposed.
to groom the children. Yeah. They're supposed to take care of the home front. Women are not supposed to go out and be struggling for money. What does the woman? Yes, what does the woman bring to the table? That's what the man asks now. And what do you expect? When the children are left with the nanny, when they come back from school, they're at home with the nanny. Of course, we must have a cultural decline.
You're right.
Yes. A woman is not supposed to go and be struggling, rubbing shoulders with men to look for money. No.
No, but things are changing.
Yes, things have changed.
When
That's what I'm saying.
When I see
things
women,
have
for
changed.
instance,
Women are out for 13 hours, 14 hours
at
out
construction
of the home.
sites,
What
bearing blocks on their
Yes,
head.
yes.
Women, they were created soft.
Yes.
They were made for a purpose.
What purpose?
To bring the soft things about life to the child.
Yes.
Okay? But somehow, I didn't
But
know
women are now men. We talk to you like a man.
But we say that what a man can do, a woman can do better.
No, that is the Englishman's way of thinking. But
is that not what is
traditionally,
fueling all this?
culturally, religiously,
Is that not
a
what is
woman
fueling
is
all this?
supposed to, yes, a woman is supposed to be home. She's
Yes.
supposed to be home. The children will wake up and see their mom.
Anyway,
they will
before
say,
we go-
Yes.
At a stage, your wife becomes your sister.
Yes.
Then at a point, she becomes the mom of the family.
Exactly.
Okay, Chooks, okay. Before we go, let's look at AFCON. Super Eagles to get $1.3 million if they beat Angola.
If
You're
If
trying to
Super
make me feel
Eagles.
bad because I told, was it Claire the other time? I was Lukito on the field of play. I was good. It's just that oversized men were pushing me down anyhow. Oversized men.
Yes.
were pushing me down. And
yes.
those kind of people you look at, you're talking to them, it's as if you're praying to God.
Well,
Over tall.
that's a good incentive from the federal government. $1.3 million is a lot of money, and I'm sure these boys are now saying we must win this time around.
Quickly.
I expect the boys to bring the cup home. That's what I expect from them.
They have been progressing.
I expect them to bring the cup
They
home.
have
It's been too
progressing
long.
piecemeal. I want to see Osimhen reenact
Yes.
all those assists he gave, at the last match.
Yes, yes. Look,
It
man.
is Corrigal.
Yes.
But he was the architect, the maker
Yes.
of those goals.
Actually, you could see the team spirit. I
Yeah.
mean, the team,
It's coming.
it was just...
How we were. Gentlemen, sorry,
Atlanta 96.
quickly. 111 points, how much? Declared by Boa Cement after tax, as after tax profit. And you remember, Boa
That's
Cement...
after bringing down the
Chooks.
price.
Boa Cement said the other time, we are taking it down a bit. Meaning that the poor man can build a house with cheaper cement, isn't it?
Chooks,
If you have the money
the
to buy the
director
land.
is warning us.
Okay.
that we
Thank
should
you
draw
so
the
much.
curtain.
It's okay.
Yeah, so we
we've
have to draw
talked-
the curtain
yes,
here.
yes,
okay.
yes. Okay.
All right, so we take a break now. Good Morning Nigeria continues. Stay with us. You're welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Just before we begin our conversation this morning, let's take this background report by Abdul Salam Jubril.
On 1st January 1973, the Central Bank of Nigeria introduced notes for 1 naira, 5 naira, 10 naira, and 20 naira. In the same year, its exchange rate to the dollar was less than a naira. Over 2 decades later, the naira to the dollar exchange rate was 17.30 naira. By 2003, the exchange rate was between 104 naira to 127 naira, and as at December 2023, the official exchange rate stood at about 898 naira. With the current exchange rate closing at 1,482.52 to a dollar on the official investor and export window on Tuesday, experts insist the naira is on a free fall. Just 24 hours earlier, the exchange rate was at 1,348.63 naira to a dollar, signifying a 9.93% decline, according to data from the Financial Market Infrastructure Group Warehousing (FMDQ) Securities Exchange. Recall that President Tinubu, on assumption of office, took some initiatives such as unifying the exchange rate as well as floating the local currency to stimulate domestic production as well as boost foreign exchange earnings. Other analysts have attributed the fall of the naira to the technical devaluation of the currency. They maintain that it has led to further price hikes on items such as food, clothing, and shelter, considered necessities. The latest report by the National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) shows that Nigeria's inflation rose for the 12th straight month to a 20-year high of 28.92% from 28.20% in November. While the currency of Africa's largest economy has continued to slide freely since the reforms, the CBN has blamed inadequate dollar liquidity for exacerbating price swings and promised to boost supply to clear a backlog of foreign exchange demand. How much will this ameliorate the current fall of the naira to the dollar, and what must be done to ensure that naira is strengthened going forward? Guests on the program will be speaking to these and more in a moment.
Thank you, Abdul Salam Jibril, for the background report. We have here one of our regulars, Professor Uche Owaleke, Professor of Finance and Capital Market, Nassau State University. And we hear that he has added another cap to his resume. He is now the Special Advisor to the Chairman Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions. Congratulations and compliments of the season.
Yeah, thank you, Jumai. Thank you, Adamola. Good morning, Nigerians.
And also here in the studio is another regular, Ni Akinsuju, Finance and Investment Analyst. You're welcome.
It's a pleasure as always. Thank you so much.
We also have Farouk Abdullahi, another regular financial analyst. It's a pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you. Good morning.
And joining us via Zoom from our Lagos studio, is Aminu Gwadabe, President Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria. Aminu, it's good to have you join us. Good morning.
And good morning, Nigerians. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's start our conversation with Prof. Prof, experts have described the current problem that we have as being multifaceted, which is including economic instability, political uncertainty, and the global market fluctuations. At the inception of this current administration, if you recall, the Naira stood at 462 Naira to the US dollar at the official rate. And at the black market, it was 758 Naira. But currently, as of today, the Naira is 1,520 Naira to a dollar at the black market. How did we get here? How?
Yes, well, I think it's pretty known to virtually every Nigerian now. Every Nigerian is worried, so everybody you find, even those in secondary school, they are monitoring the situation and they understand the causatic factors, the underlying factors. You said it's multifaceted, yes. All those factors you're mentioning go to affect the basic, if you like, factors that also influence the price of the Naira, in this case, the exchange rate. And what are these factors? Basically, demand and supply. Okay, so the fact that we are having this pressure is simply on account of the illiquidity. Illiquidity means inadequate, insufficient supply, in that market. So the supply thing is an issue. The demand pressure is also an issue. So when you combine this, you now get the situation that you have. Now you talked about when exchange rate was 465 in the official market and about 7 in the parallel market. At the time, we also had this issue. Okay, the exchange rate was only being propped up in the official market. So as it were, okay, exchange rate at that time, the Naira at that time was overvalued in the official market. So the unification, tended to reveal the true situation. That was why you saw the official exchange rate moving very close to the parallel market rate. But of course, the problem has persisted. This problem of supply. All right. Now the central bank has, tried to see how it could raise the government in general, increase the liquidity, including through borrowing from the Afrexim Bank. Okay, but unfortunately, all that has come in so far is still would appear infinitesimal, to the backlog of demand, that we have. You recall, the central bank said recently, or claimed recently, that it has, cleared the bulk of, backlogs. But we still find, some people, particularly IATA, the foreign airlines, saying that, much of their money is still blocked. They can't retrieve that. So that tells you that the hole, is huge, and that's why, Demola, one of the things I said I will submit today when I come here, okay, even if that is the only thing I submit today, is that this problem is not about the central bank. I've just said there is supply and there's the demand side. Okay, I think the pressure is coming more from the demand side, because even if you try to bring in dollars, the more dollars you bring, as long as you don't fix the demand side, that leakage will be there. That's what I'm saying is more a responsibility of the government than the central bank. Remember, the central bank does not print dollar. Okay, so even when the central bank says it will help to improve supply, the only way it can improve supply is to maybe find ways to stimulate inflows, such as the one it has done now. There's a recent memo by the central bank, removing the exchange rate caps on international money transfer, for international money transfer operations, just to incentivize them, to bring in, dollars. So that's the much the central bank, can do. Okay, but the bulk of the work, as far as I'm concerned, rests on the, table of the government. Okay, why do I say that? It is the government that will need to somehow come up with a law, a legislation, which I've always advocated, that there's need for us in this country to have a Buy Nigerian law. We don't have a Buy Nigerian law. In the past, we had executive orders, that, didn't carry the force of law. But when we have a Buy Nigerian law, the same way, akin to what you have in the U.S., the U.S., at some point enacted a Buy America, Build America Act. That was in 2021. Before then, they also had a Buy America Act of 1933. So occasionally, as circumstances demand, they had these laws. So we also need something similar that will compel.
If we're going to have something similar, then we should be having our industries and others working. But at this time, most of the industries have closed shop.
Why have they closed shop? Okay, you can only produce when there's demand for your goods and services.
Yeah.
So when you demand foreign goods, and these local firms are not selling, okay, how do they continue in production? So it's only when you patronize them that they'll even have the money to reinvest. So a Buy Nigerian law is needed.
Is that not the reason why government devalued the Naira, so that it would discourage us from patronizing the foreign goods?
No, what does devaluation do? Okay, devaluation essentially, they say if you devalue, you help
encourage export
exactly,
and discourage import.
Exactly, but but unfortunately for us, our major source of forex has remained petroleum, and that's why NMPC that used to remit $3 to $4 billion on a monthly basis is no more doing anything now. Okay, and that's why we have that hole, in the supply side. Now, talking about what the government needs to do, I just mentioned the Buy Nigerian law issue. Okay, we also need to have the government also needs to address this issue of dollarization of the economy. Dollarization, the tendency for people now to spend dollar when Naira is the legal.
But how can
anyway,
they help
Prof,
themselves there?
we're going to come to what can be done,
Yes.
to checkmate, this free fall of Naira.
Yeah,
so let's move on to...
in the meantime, we were going to introduce our guests from Benin Studio. We're being joined by Mike Obada, Professor of Economics and Chairman Goldmark Education Academy, Benin City, and former Director General, National Center for Economic Management and Administration, Ibadan. He's the former member of the CBN's Monetary Policy Committee. A pleasure to have you join us. As always, he's also a regular.
It's my very great pleasure to be with you this morning. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, I'm going to stay with you, Professor Obada. While a comprehensive policy approach to stabilizing the Naira, they say, is necessary. Now tell us, how essential is it to ensure that these policies are correctly implemented for the desired outcome to be achieved? We've seen so many policies being rolled out by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and he said that he will run through his economic policies even if he becomes unpopular. And the Senate committee is calling the CBN governor to come and explain what is happening to the Naira, the declining value of the Naira. How essential is it that implementation should take place with these policies so that we can see the end result?
Jumai, you talk about implementation of policies, but I think the first thing to be agreed upon is, why are we where we are? The background introduction and all that mentioned the current state of the free fall of the Naira. The parallel market rate is over 1,500 Naira to the dollar, and even the official rate is over 1,400 Naira to the dollar. So the very first important thing for me, even before we start saying how do we redress the current situation, is what are the objectives of the current exchange rate policy? I am quite confused about the direction the Naira exchange rate is going. And the Monetary and Fiscal Authority do not seem to be concerned about the scandalous direction in which the exchange rate, the Naira exchange rate, is moving. What are the objectives of exchange rate policy? Is it to achieve external balance, that is to say, the balance of international payments? Number two, is it to catch up with the parallel market rate or the black market rate? Number three, is the exchange rate policy to balance the budget of the government? I think these are pertinent questions that need to be addressed. If we're able to get proper answers, then we'll be able to get a good direction going forward. For me, the objective of exchange rate policy is not to catch up with the parallel market rate as is currently, what seems to be playing out. Secondly, the primary objective of exchange rate policy is not to balance the budget, which seems to be the priority consideration in the exchange rate design and implementation. The primary objective is to balance the external transactions. That is to say, achieve balance of payments equilibrium it appears that for quite a long time, the primary objective had been sidelined, and the focus seems to be, the use of exchange rate, to balance the federal government budget. And hence, you now even find that in the budget, you talk about, exchange rate gain, which arises from selling, crude oil at very high, prices and converting the money at high exchange rate. So invariably, if we miss the objectives, then definitely we will not be able to achieve any headway. I do not see any reason why the official rate should be chasing the parallel market rate. As I have said a number of times in the past, and I've also written in black and white, the official rate cannot be chasing the parallel market rate. It's not necessary, it's not desirable. The official rate must relate to what we call the purchasing power parity rate. And I'm sure that as of today, what we have as official rate is much higher than the purchasing power parity rate. Perhaps that is the reason why the reports in the last few days indicated that the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria had indicated that the Naira is undervalued. And if the Naira is undervalued because of the way we are jacking up the exchange rate in the name of market forces, then we need to do the needful. That is to say, leave the market forces out, because there is no perfect market in Nigeria. The foreign exchange market is cornered by a group of people. And, so you cannot have, a market rate that is that aligns with equilibrium rate under such circumstances. And so I think we need to go back to the drawing board, and say what our objectives are, and then get proper approaches. And one of the approaches is not market forces. The CBN must go back to the drawing board and manage the exchange rate, for the good of Nigerians, and, to have, a good headway on the current economic crisis, which is engineered by, one of which is engineered by a factor, the exchange rate depreciation, and many other factors. So the question of implementation that you asked, once we get our policy design, exchange rate policy design right, that we can start talking about the strategies to implement, which I believe that one of which will not be market forces, because it's not acceptable under the circumstances of Nigeria. It's not helpful to Nigeria. We have seen the damage, which market forces approach can do to an economy with what is happening to Nigeria as of today.
Thank you very much, Prof, for raising some pertinent issues there. And I believe that in the studio we have been listening to what the Prof and the issues that he has raised. Niyi, let me just come to you right now. The objective, actually, of government policy. You know that when this present administration came on board, President Tinubu, announced the unification of the exchange rate, as well as floating the local currency. So, what did you think should have been done?
Well, I think the president and the government had done what is appropriate. A universal objectivity in policy regarding forex and foreign exchange rates is transparency. That's the first objective. And the major challenge for any understudy of the market is to say when you peg a foreign exchange rate to serve developmental purposes, usually that's the reason you peg it. What are the fallouts? respected Professor had also talked about the fact that you have a small number of people, who controls the market. And we are talking of a sovereign market here. A sovereign market should not be beholden to a small number of people. And because no matter how you now play it, once you apply that, there would always be distortion in the system. Because it's no longer even the managers of that rate that is in control of the rate. You have a group of outsiders controlling that rate and profiting, from the rate. And once you have a small number of people profiting from the rate, it's no longer serving the national developmental interest. So the first thing, and it had been an issue of advocacy among some of us over time, that look, the fact that I don't know somebody, I don't have nexus, as they put it, and because I don't have nexus, I could not assess the pegged rate. So what is the equity derived from there? The person that needs it to purchase raw materials from somewhere outside this country could not get it. But the person who has nexus could get it and then round trip, which had been a perennial source of challenge for Nigerians, So that distortion would also come with distortion in the economic environment, artificial as it were. So for me, the objective of transparency is as important as anything. Now going forward, we are in a process of price recovery. Now, to understand how we have been subsidizing the Naira will be anchored on eventually what the market determines. And I think there's even a need for Nigerians to understand that, so that we know how perhaps wasteful we have been, So even at 460, for instance, and there was that constant intervention of the CBN in the market. Good.
The recent $500 million injected.
No. It's in the past. Okay. You had virtually every month between 1 and 1.5 billion being injected in the official market to sustain the rate. Now, that was to sustain that particular pegged rate. We do not know what the open market rate was. Okay. And of course, it was also a limited rate. It was a limited access market. And because of that, you also have an outside peripheral market that was also bustling with a lot of demand. So and that was what was driving the black market, And the reflection of it is what we are now seeing now. We had a black market that was bustling at the stream, at the steam, as it were. So the important thing now is, one, let us know what the market will determine for us going forward. It will, of course, yes, the CBN governor had said that the Naira is undervalued, which I agree. But again, the practical reality is that the exchange rate will be determined with the equilibrium between inflow and outflow. As Prof had said, what's the extent of inflow? What's the extent of outflow? What we have now is that we have more outflow. And for whatever reason, it's even getting more dangerous because it has gone beyond use now. The peripheral demand, for instance, you have people now pairing Naira against dollar in the forex trade, the unofficial forex trade, and constantly betting on the Naira sliding. So, and because they are betting on the Naira sliding, the Naira will continue to slide. That is where they are putting their stake, that Naira will slide. That is one small portion of the whole market, the whole quality of the market. So what I'm saying essentially is, if there are a backlog of forex that we have not been able to address, let us address. And don't also forget that these backlogs were generated during the pegged regime. So which means the pegged regime was not exactly too efficient. And we had also seen how the constrained official devaluation of the Naira to other convertible currency had also happened about 2 or 3 times in the last 8 years, which also talks to the fact that, one, it is not predictable, two, it is not accessible, and of course, it distorts the system. So I think the harmonization of the window is appropriate. And that going forward, the need will now be for the CBN to be more proactive, you know. Proactive, for instance, in the way they have come up with this net open position, you know, circular to the commercial banks. You would have thought that with all the challenges we're having, deposit money banks, as we call them, would perhaps be patriotic a bit, not to profiteer from our challenges. It is when I saw that, I was like, not again. We had always held the money deposit banks suspect, you know, for any form of white collar criminality in the market, but not at this time. Okay. So to imagine that some banks were actually going out to purchase dollar, or either at the official rate or at the black market rate, to hold and then come and dump when there's depreciation, it is criminal, you know. Yeah, so I am hoping that the central bank will be more forthright, more proactive in their regulatory oversight.
Okay, let's bring in Farouk Abdullah into the conversation. You know, the stabilization of the Naira is a continuous work in progress, they say. And Ni and Professor Obada and our prof here have sort of agreed on some things here, but he has said that they should go back to the drawing table to look at the strategies that were looked into before the policies were rolled out. And it's alarming what is happening in this country. Everything is becoming dollarized. It's as if we no longer talk about Naira, we talk about... Somebody told me to check for AC for him yesterday, and I went online to check for AC. The one I bought for 80,000, 4 years ago is going for like 370, 400,000. I said, what? What is happening? How can we begin to rejig the economy by looking at these policies? Most of these policies were an assumption. It seems like it's not really working, is it?
Absolutely. Thank you. You see, the current situation is tantamount to taking Panadol to treat malaria. It can only ameliorate the symptoms of malaria, but it cannot address the problem, the ailment. We have all agreed that the root cause of the instability or the issues around the Naira depreciation is predicated upon the weak supply of forex into the country. And unless and until we address this problem, we'll just continue to be running about without getting to find a lasting solution to all the problems. And you see, the government have to be very strategic in understanding the kind of policies that peculiarly addresses the issue or the challenges.
The Nigerian problem.
Absolutely. And at what time intervals. Having a short-term plan definitely cannot give a long-lasting solution, while a long-standing solution requires planning, a long-term plan that would help in stabilizing the economy. We all agree that we're having serious economic instability. That is why most of the economic fundamentals and variables are not in good shape. How can we now solve or resolve this issue? That is where we need to put in much of our eggs so that at least we can have a long-standing solution around it. For instance, Nigeria have been heavily relying on oil exports, to finance our budget and also to stabilize the forex market. And if you look at records, for instance, in 2008, the excess crude account was, I think, to a tune of $20 billion. But as at last year, August, the excess crude account has depleted to virtually $407 something thousand. So this is really sad. Government have been servicing the economy with Panadol treatment, utilizing what we have, to ameliorate the problem in the short term. Yes. And believe me, the CBN or the government alone cannot solve this problem. Our mindset as Nigerians plays an important role in bringing about a change in the dynamics of the forex market. For instance, if we want to improve on non-oil exports, we would have to improve on our productive capacity. We'll have to make exportation much more fancier. If now in our dining tables we realize that most of the items there are imported, it simply tells us that there lies a problem. Just as Prof said, we need to promote Nigerian products. This alone will play a great role in changing the dynamics of things, because once we begin to consume local product, it would incentivize, the production of such items locally, and even the government will feel encouraged to invest more in that direction.
Okay.
Another issue is the issue of corruption. I always like to mention that.
Big elephant in the room,
the big elephant, absolutely. Yes. I think some year or 2 years ago, I think around 2022, there was a report by PwC to the federal government around corruption. They made a research, and in the findings revealed that corruption cost each Nigerian $1,000, and it was projected that by 2030, corruption would cost each Nigerian $2,000, which ultimately means that it will gulp up 50% of our GDP. Okay. So this is really a sad one.
It is really a sad one. Thank you, Farouk, for your thoughts there. You have raised some pertinent issues there. The issue of that we must endeavor to, to have a change of mindset, and also the issue of tackling corruption. Now let's join our guest in Lagos, Gwadabe. Gwadabe is the president of the Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria. Gwadabe, what exactly is the situation with the Bureau de Change right now? Because we gathered that some Bureau de Change are doing what? They are closing business. They are closing shop due to scarcity of dollars. And we don't know what exactly is the problem. And you have heard the issues we are discussing, trying to stabilize the Naira. How do we go about, all these challenges?
Very much. By way of laying foundation, the volatility has escalated into a terrifying, contagious national epidemic. It's a deviation from the mean. We have said it all, from average of 700 last year to about 1,500, both official and unofficial. So that's about 100% changes in volatility. So it's a high volatility. And out of that, there are many manifestations of this. There is panic buying. There is agitations. People are scared. There is a lot of hoarding in the market. I want to also lay an emphasis here. The demand of dollar is not what is causing volatility, but the pressure of unearned income, like you have just said, is what is giving the volatility in the foreign exchange market. The elephant in the house, which is corruption. Having said this foundation, there are 4 elements to exchange rate volatility. There is the supply of dollar, there is demand of dollar, there is supply of Naira, and there is the demand of Naira. If we look at the supply of dollar, we have about 4 sources: the crude oil proceed, the export proceed, diaspora remittances, investment inflows, which could be portfolio and direct foreign investment. Let's start with the NNPC proceed. There are a lot of questions. Where is the dollar of NNPC? 2, the budget is even built on the proceed of NNPC proceed. NNPC is such a big cow that after maybe the budget and planning ministry have come up with a budget, they rely mostly on what the NNPC will produce, with what the NNPC will sell. Tomorrow, NNPC will wake up and say, hey, CBN, I'm not going to give you any dollar. I'm doing swap. And what does swap mean? Swap means I will give you crude oil and exchange it for refined product. So what happened for that proceed of that day that maybe the Ministry of Trade and Exchange have put into consideration in preparing the budget, which means a deficit have arisen already. Also, we have been hearing about diversion, crude oil theft, which also impact negatively on what we should have expected as proceed of the export crude sales. In the same vein, when you look at also the export proceed, for instance, non-export proceed, what is happening right now in the market? The export proceed is not even coming back into this country. Why? Because unearned income have found its way into those export proceed to make it legitimate. People go there now, buy commodities, export, which they are not bringing this money back. 2, companies that have dividends to remit as a way of taking their money out are coming into that sector, commodity export, to mop up whatever available product that is there and export it abroad. The export proceed is not going to come back because the objective is to exit their dividends. Then, if you look at diaspora remittances, last year, the World Bank gave a statistics of $20 billion. Nigeria is the number 3rd or 4th after China, India, Philippines, and Nigeria in terms of diaspora remittances. And it's huge, it's cheap. Imagine a country where there's an inflow of $20 billion into that economy, and you cannot see the impact of that $20 billion into the economy. So is it real? Has it really come into the economy? So that is about sources of dollars, which you can see is all precarious from all the major sources that support to help the buffers of the Central Bank of Nigeria to ensure they have the arsenal and fight volatility. Then come to demand of dollars. The fractional demand of dollar, the legitimate fractional demand of dollar is lower than the illegitimate, illegal fractional demand of dollars. What is the fractional legitimate demand of dollar? A Nigerian that need 1,000 to travel, somebody that need $500 to go to school, to pay for school fees, or $5,000 to pay for school fees, somebody that need $5,000 to pay for medicals. These are what we call legitimate demand of dollar. But unfortunately, the fraction of a legitimate demand of dollar outstripped the legitimate fraction of the demand of dollar. What are these illegal fraction of the demand for dollar? You find out that politicians need dollars, contractors need dollars, everybody needs dollars in this country. to make payment, like the word they are using there in the field, in the studio, dollarization. Dollarization. So, and it's not a rocket science. It's an interplay of demand and supply. Where you have the demand outstripping the supply, definitely there will be crisis, there will be confusion, there will be disequilibrium. And this is what we are seeing. Then let's come to Naira. The only factor out of these 4 elements, for now, in my own thinking, that the regulators have control is the supply of Naira. Tomorrow, the governor of Central Bank, Yemi Cardoso, can say, by ways and means, we have seen it. Over time, that is the only element out of the 4 that the regulators and the fiscal authorities can command control. Is the demand of Naira? Let's go to the demand of Naira. The presenter there, she started by a price of fridge. Last 4 years, she said that it's about 78,000, and now it's 484,000 thereabout. I've never heard that inflation rate in Nigeria has gone above 30%. What is the inflation changes variation between 78,000 and 450,000? Is it in 30% or in 100% of inflation variation? So what is our statistics? What is our consumer protection department doing in gathering data for effective and efficient policy of the regulators and the fiscal policies? Then you look at also behaviors. What causes volatility? People cause volatility. Already we have talked of panic. Already we have talked of apprehension. There are a lot of players in the market. Yes, of course, CBN is the first, central bank is the first line of defense. They cannot be exonerated completely. With due respect, being a regulator, they have a role to play in ensuring how do we control the market. Exchange rate volatility is like a run of water. If you did not control it or direct it, it will direct itself. Then, having said all these factors that culminated to be putting pressure and to make all of us confused, as if there is no solution. Sometimes I laugh. We go to India and say we are looking for a solution to resolve our balance of payment problem, to inject liquidity into our system. Nigeria is richer than India in terms of resources. It's purely act of mismanagement. Then coming to our last question that you are asking, some people are having to shut down. You see, the Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria is an umbrella body of Central Bank licensed Bureau de Change. And being a licensed bank, licensed operators, we are guided by our guidelines and regulations of the Central Bank of Nigeria. So what other players are doing is the right of their opinion, is the right of their obligations. However, as an association, we have been engaging various agencies of government, both security agencies, the National Assembly. A lot of engagement are ongoing as we speak today on how.
Okay, Mr. Gwadabe, yeah, we've had your submission, and you've raised some issues, pertaining how the operations of the Bureau de Change works and how things can be turned around for the better in the country. Let's come back to Professor Waleke here in the studio. They said that there needs to be a concerted effort, in tackling systematic corruption in the system. I know, through some critical areas like investment and all that. The corruption is like the big elephant in the room. You just can't take it away from that. And a lot of people have accused the Bureau de Change of, encouraging hoarding and round tripping in Nigeria. So what kind of stringent measures should be put in place to ensure that these efforts that are being put into the policy, financial policy in Nigeria, actually works?
Yeah, thank you, Jumai. You see, That was why I said from the onset that as far as this issue of forest crisis is concerned, that the government has, a greater role to play relative to the Central Bank of Nigeria. I was listening to Professor Obadan and his submissions, and Chief Akinseju, quite interesting submission. So you could see that two of them are coming from two different points of view. Professor Obadan is of the opinion that there should be intervention. The central bank should be able to intervene. Chief Akinseju is in support of market forces, as it were. Now, of course, each of these, has merits and demerits. But at the end of the day, what matters is on balance, okay, which one should is more appropriate, given the circumstances. I think the challenge with, allowing purely, if you like, invisible hands, market forces to determine the value of the Naira. The challenge with free float is because a major condition for free float is not met in Nigeria, currently. And that's the fact that you can only succeed with free float when, number one, you have a diversified export base, you have multiple streams of, forex, and number two, perhaps more importantly, you have sufficient reserves, external reserves. Okay. Now, when you don't have external reserves, or you don't have multiple streams of income, it's difficult for you to say you want market forces to determine your, your exchange rate or the value of the Naira. So that is why I tend to agree, with those who say that the Naira should not be left to the fate of market forces, completely, because of this, if you like, necessary conditions.
But that is what is happening.
Yes, that's why. That's also why I argued in the past. Unification of exchange rates, very good, but how should that be approached? Okay, I think we approached it a little in a hurry. Okay, we should have allowed some of these conditions to be in place before unifying, before saying you're floating the Naira. Now that the deed has been done, if you like, I think we are at the point of what do we do, to salvage the situation, which is also why I said, and I want to go back to it, that the central bank does not print the Naira. Section 16 of the Central Bank of the CBN Act 2007, says central bank, is to determine the exchange rate of the Naira using any, mechanism that it deems fit. That's Section 16. And Section 2 of the CBN Act, where the functions are specified, one of the functions, number C, there says that it's a duty of the central bank to maintain external reserves, with a view to, to defending the international value of the legal tender. That's talking about the Naira now. So again, that tells you that reserves are needed to be able to manage, exchange rate. So because the central bank doesn't print the Naira, and because the central bank, in this circumstance, okay, cannot influence supply, substantially, except through what it is doing now, borrowing dollars to be able to clear backlogs, and the rest of them, which, of course, at the end of the day, when you borrow to clear, if you're only postponing the inevitable, the evil day. Okay, I've even read some suggestions. The other day, somebody was saying that the central bank should also think of going to invest in the U.S. 30-year zero coupon, U.S. Treasury. Okay, and when you do that, you're likely to get 15 billion at the end of 30 years. So, using that, you can use that now as collateral to borrow $15 billion to be able to clear backlogs and intervene. Again, a number of suggestions have been coming. But ultimately, what that also means is borrowing. Some other people have also said the government should also approach the IMF. Again, that's borrowing. Okay? And given where we are now in terms of borrowing, today, if you look at our debt stock, DMO says it's 87 trillion. Yes. Okay? Part of what also ballooned that up has to be the ways and means, which is why I said the bulk of the assignment has to be with the government. On the part of the central bank, remember, again, let us also admit that part of why we are in this crisis today, I would say most of these challenges are inherited. These are legacy challenges. The huge ways and means that came into the system, 30 trillion naira. Remember, the first one they securitized was 22.7 trillion. Then later, 7.3. So if you add the two, that's 30 trillion. So that's huge, and it's still in the system. Okay, that's also, there's also a link to corruption. When you have this kind of money in the system that didn't go to fund productive activity, okay, you are likely to see inflation. And part of why we also see this currency substitution, people trying to demand dollar, is also because of rising inflation. The naira is also losing value. The purchasing power is declining domestically. So people now tend to also demand the dollar. So the higher the inflation rate, the higher you also find the exchange rate. And part of why we have inflation rate as high as we have it today, even though, yes, people will still say that official numbers are still understated, part of why we have very high inflation rate today is also because of the huge ways and means, printing of money that, came into the system. Now, much of that you find, and the unfortunate thing is that the money was not used for productive activity. We didn't see it in production. We didn't see it in, that's why if you check the GDP reports, manufacturing sector, okay, is tanking. Okay, the last GDP report, quarter 3 of 2023, manufacturing sector only managed to grow by 0.48%.
Yes.
Okay, the agri sector, just 1.3%. Okay, it's only the services sector that, where you find growth. And that is because much of this money, okay, where do you find them? Some people use them to buy property and lock up. Okay, some use them to, at best, you find people setting up hotels, okay, or filling stations. These are services.
Yes.
All right. So the reproduction, doesn't happen because the money didn't go there. And again, look at what is happening in our stock market today. Okay, people say there's no money in this country, but if you look at what's happening in the stock market, you realize that there's money. Just between January 1st. On January 1st, market capitalization was 40 trillion. Yes. 40 trillion naira. Today, market capitalization is in excess of 57 trillion. So within a space of a few days, you can see 17 trillion has entered that market. Okay, there are two ways by which market cap can grow. It's either companies come to issue shares, okay, or the price of shares are rising, of course, or both. So in this instance, we didn't see new companies issuing shares. So all that has happened is just a price rise, and that's why the index, has gone from about 74.7, 74,000 in January, on January 1st, to over 100,000 now. Okay. So what I'm saying is that there's money in this country, and unfortunately, those that even have this money, if you check the terms of government revenue, a lot of that tells you that taxes too, there's a lot of gap. They are not paying the level of tax that they're supposed to pay. So, Jomai, permit me to go back to emphasize the point I made earlier. If we have to solve this problem, the government, when I say government, fiscal authority, yes, and the central bank must sit down and agree on the solution. It's not about central bank alone. Central bank alone cannot tackle it.
The government and the central bank must agree on the solution.
Yes,
so we're talking about the monetary policy.
Yeah, monetary policy and fiscal policy must have a handshake.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof.
Let me quickly drop this point.
Okay.
I know initially I mentioned the issue of buying Nigerian law. Yeah. That's fiscal. I also mentioned the issue of dollarization. Yeah. It's mainly fiscal. Then there's also this issue of FAC receipts. Okay, recently you've seen how FAC receipts have been rising. Today they share over 1 trillion. When I was finance commissioner in my state, during that period, the highest we were shared, the entire thing was about 6 billion. Today is 1 point something,
so there's so much money.
Trillion. And with what has just happened now, the recent devaluation, FMDQ changed their pricing system, okay? So with what is happening now, with official exchange rate now close to 1,500, you're going to see it's also going to translate to increased FAC. Okay, government will have more money, more Naira money, and that will be, much of that will unfortunately will also go to chase the Forex.
Okay, all right, thank you, Prof. We'll get more when we come back from the break. Although, let's take a break now. Good Morning Nigeria continues. Stay with us. You're welcome back. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria, and the topic we're still discussing is stabilizing the Naira. And we still have our guest in the studio, but we'll go to our Benin studio where we have Prof. Obadan there. Prof, a lot of issues have been raised, especially the issue of capital flight, which I want you to actually address. What strategy do the government can implement to discourage and also to encourage investors to keep their capital within the country?
Thank you very much, Demola. The issue of capital flight, it derives from the underlying conditions of the economy. As of today, there is high rate of inflation, and the exchange rate has escalated to very unacceptable levels. And there's, the atmosphere, the production atmosphere appears not to be conducive, deriving from numerous factors, including this exchange rate depreciation and a very high rate of inflation. And some people, businesses, are taking out money. Let me say that elements of the capital flight derive from sheer, desire to escape from the present situation of the Nigerian economy. And so, first and foremost, if we want to promote, capital inflows rather than flight from Nigeria, then we need to do something about inflation. We need to do something about this depreciation of the Naira, both of which increase the cost of production and make, the goods and services to be uncompetitive, both in the domestic market and in the international market. And it is the same factors that make it virtually impossible for foreign enterprises in the country to produce at reasonable prices and then sell, the goods. And so something, need to be done about the investment environment, the investment atmosphere. And it doesn't seem that government, is appreciating this. Otherwise, it will not allow, the exchange rate to continue to depreciate or even do certain things that contribute to, escalating inflation. And it would also, be seen to be more serious in addressing the insecurity challenges of the country. Such challenges have escalated in the last few months, in recent times. Everywhere you hear of killings, kidnappings, murders here and there. The latest of which is even in the southwest, Ondo State. Some monarchs, and other people were kidnapped and murdered and so on. Such situation does not encourage, investment, even by Nigerians, within the country. Not to mention, foreigners, that are in the country. It's a major factor why foreigners, are exiting the country. And other such circumstances, whether government officials travel all over the world and kneel to beg investors to come in, it's very unlikely that they will respond. They will listen to entreaties and sermons to them, but they will not respond because the underlying economic conditions are not there in Nigeria. So it's important for government, to start thinking, about the current situation. How do we remedy the economic situation of crisis? There is crisis. Government must appreciate that there is an economic crisis and not continue to do things or be seen to be promoting, certain things that contribute to an unconducive atmosphere. But let me also use the opportunity to, say something about one important point that Dr. Gwadabe made, considering or in relation to the issue of, illegitimate demand for foreign exchange, which had been a major factor escalating, the exchange rate. Such illegitimate demand, emanate from, big-time speculators, in the country, cabals that have taken over, the foreign exchange market, that are very willing to buy foreign exchange at any price in promotion of capital flight, not for production, in the country. And such, cabals they seem to be very powerful, and they're having a field day because of the system we are operating, the system of free float of the Naira, liberalization of the foreign exchange market. And so they are free, to even go into the official market and buy foreign exchange at any price, and also go into the black market at any price to buy foreign exchange.
Okay. Professor Obada, thank you so much there. Thank you so much there. Let's come back to the studio where Ni Akisuju is seated. Now that the assumption, of collapsing the exchange rate, and that will bring stability to the foreign exchange market has been proven wrong, what next do we need to do? It's all an assumption. Yes, collapsing the exchange rate has not produced any good thing for the country, has it?
For every policy deployment, there will always be a short period of rumbling, in that environment, because it's a change of policy, it's a paradigm shift, and so there will be adaptation, adjustment. So what we are experiencing now are forms of adjustments and adaptation to the new policy. So it is not an established, position.
But this adaptation and adjustment that you just mentioned is creating a lot of hardship for the common man, and people are really groaning, under this policy.
And I think at the highest level of government, I've heard the president, speak about this, about the fact that in the short time there will be pains, there will be challenges.
But who are feeling the pains? All subsidy removal nowadays, who are feeling the pains? It is the people at the lower level.
And the question is, how long will this pain last?
Short term. Short term. Knowing that eventually...
What is short term? How do you describe short term?
We'll break into the light of the day.
Okay.
Now, what is short term? Economists will put short term between 1 maximum 3 years. It could be any of that threshold, But the truth is that a policy that would work, you would start seeing the positivity of it even from the second or third month, what we call the green shoot, But the challenges for Nigeria, or the major challenge, is what we have talked about speculation, about corruption, and in assuaging this challenge, especially for a foreign exchange rate, it's about inflow and outflow. It has been established. I am taking us back to pre-June 2023. What was the situation? The rate was falling. Foreign reserve was falling. At the time between 2021 and 2022, I don't want to go back to pre-COVID-19. We were foreign reserve was stated at around $39 and $40 billion consistently over a period of time. Then it got to a stage it was depreciating. It was declining, not even per COVID, because of demand pressure. So much that by May 2023, it was under $35 billion. You know, so it was not an ideal situation. And of course...
But these demands, just like has been said, most of them are illegitimate.
Even then it was controlled. It was not an open market then. It was a controlled market. You have 43 items that were first banned, you know, from accessing the market. You also had limited access to the formal market, as it were. So it was a controlled market. So what I'm trying to say is that time that pegging was not a solution, you know, to the economic challenges we were being confronted with. Okay. And that opening up the market may likely be a solution because, one, there will be access. Yes, as Professor Walike had said, there might not have been the condition precedent to opening up the market, as it were. But when would we get to that point that we will have condition precedent, where we will have enough supply, for instance? Do we wait until then before we apply this kind of policy?
Well, it will be for the financial experts like you and Professor Waleke and Abdullahi to respond to.
Okay.
Yes,
you want to ask
yes, Abdullahi, I wanted to ask this question. You know, 2 recessions we've gone through, then COVID-19. Did we really get out of these recessions?
This is a beautiful question. Well, we're out of the recession by virtue of the indices that...
This is just some financial jargons for people not to understand what actually is going on.
But what we are facing now is the explosion of an economic time bomb, which we have been seeing it coming, you know, and here we are today. All the parameters, everything is not working. So just as Doctor has rightly said, monetary policy, fiscal policy, these 2 things needs to be aligned, and, you know, I think a robust roadmap and strategy needs to be coined out and worked out. So in that way we can get out of the mess. But the situation it's quite alarming, frankly speaking. So we have to do a lot. Even the Bureau de Change, they have to help us. Those that are getting access to illegitimate, those that are accessing the dollar illegitimately are getting it through the parallel market. And I think I'm glad the president of the BDC guys is here. So they need to help us. They need to help the government in ensuring that these guys are not being service such kind of
tripping.
Absolutely. So I think in that way we'll get out of the mess. But
thank you very much,
Farouk. To be deliberate.
Thank you very much, Farouk, for your thoughts there. Now let's go back to Lagos. So we still have Dr. Gwadabe there. And Gwadabe, in just 2 minutes, because we've run out of time, what can your association do to help, you know, stabilize this Naira?
From the political will, I want to appreciate Mr. President with his message of hope, and that I'm calling him to do more of the elephant dances. Then 2, to the regulators have to continue to come out of their shelves. We have been collaborating with them. We have been writing strategies, giving our proposals on how to really tackle the markets. We are calling on the regulators to at least continue to collaborate. There is no need to panic. It's only that we are not looking at hanging fruit. There are a lot of hanging fruit that the country can harness and ensure that there is stability in the foreign exchange market. Volatility does not start only in Nigeria. We have seen it in Mexico. We have seen it in Russia. We have seen it in Venezuela, Turkey, and what have you. So we can manage it. We can sustain it. Then also, like you said, if you look at the collapsing of the market, we have been among the first that advocate that. And not long ago, we have seen most of the applications that determine exchange rate are not, they are speculative in nature, and they're not even domestic or owned by Nigerians. We have Binance, We have abokfs.com that don't even have offices in Nigeria and yet anchoring our rate. So we have advocated for a common website for Bureau de Change where it will be more transparent. It's out of this our advocacy that we have started seeing changes even in the I&E window, where we are now seeing separation of ownership, operations, and regulation.
Okay, Mr. Godebe, thank you so much there for your submission. Let's come back here to the studio for last words in 1 minute. You know, as the special advisor to the Chairman Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance, and other financial institutions, you've invited the CBN governor. Come and shed light on. So let's have your final thought on that.
Well, my final thought is I'm positive that the storm, we shall weather the storm. But I also think the government or the Central Bank of Nigeria, now that they're talking about recapitalizing the banks, should also be looking in the direction of the BDCs. For me, there are too many. The central bank should have a way of also reducing the number of BDCs and also to ensure an accurate reporting. Okay. You go abroad, you're buying forex, asking you for your ID and so on. No, everything is documented. But here, you walk to a BDC, you can buy as much as possible, much as you want without any documentation.
Okay.
That's a big one. Thank you very much, yes. Prof. Yeah. Professor Uche Waleke, the Professor of Finance and Capital Market, Nasarawa State, and also
Special Advisor to the Chairman Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance, and other financial institutions.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Lamana.
Also, we want to thank Chief Ni Akishiju. Thank you so much for coming. You are a finance and investment analyst. Thank you for always, heeding our call.
It's a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. And also Farouk Abdullahi, financial analyst. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And in our Bini studio, we want to thank Professor Obadan, Professor of Economics and Chairman, Goldmark Education and Academy, Benin City. Thank you so much, Prof. And also Lagos, Aminu Gwadabe, President, Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria. Thank you for your contribution.
Now let's take sports news from our sport decks.
And now it's time for foreign news.
President Joseph Boakai, who was sworn in on January 22nd, says that the balance recorded was $20.5 million, not $40, as former President George Weah had claimed. Liberian media reported that the Senate ordered the central bank to clarify conditions between President Boakai and his predecessor. According to reports, the Senate mandated its joint committees on public accounts and audit, banking, and currency to invite the leadership of the Central Bank of Liberia. President Boakai, pledging to tackle corruption, says he will audit and make sure that regular audits become the norm in all branches of government, not just the executive. Shortly after losing the presidential election last November, George Weah reportedly told an audience at his congregation that he expects Boakai not to pursue officials from his administration, just as he did not pursue anyone from the First Unity Party government when Boakai served as vice president. U.S. immigration reform has become the focus of a high-stakes political battle, with President Joe Biden and Donald Trump locking horns over one of the hottest issues of the 2024 election, with the White House race looking almost certain to be a rematch of 2020. The Republican has been hammering his Democratic successor over record numbers of undocumented migrants being picked up by patrols at the southern border. Senators are working to unveil one of the harshest immigration bills in decades, containing significant restrictions that Biden has committed to signing into law that could include Republican priorities such as temporary border shutdowns and an end to the catch and release of migrants.
And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Join us again tomorrow for another episode. I am Jumai Yusuf.
And I am Ademola Adeoye. Do have a pleasant day.